Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth session of the Nils Klim Webinar Series about transitional justice in Nordic settler states. A few words before we start. This series is financed by the Nils Klim Prize and organized together with the ERC-funded MARCEN project at the University of Turku. This webinar is recorded. It will also be published online on the MARCEN website and on YouTube. And today we have the great honor and pleasure to welcome Dr. Láilá Susanne Vars with us here today. And Dr. Vars is a human rights lawyer and an academic who also holds a PhD in international law from the Arctic University of Norway, thereby becoming the first Sámi woman to obtain a doctorate in law. She works as the senior advisor in the section for elections and parliamentary administration at the Sámi Parliament in Norway, and previously also served as a Sámi Parliament representative from 2009 to 2017. She has also worked closely with the Sámi Parliament in Norway in various capacities and served both as chair and member of the UN expert mechanism on the rights of indigenous peoples. In addition, and very importantly in this context as well, she's a member of the Swedish Truth Commission. So welcome, Dr. Vars. It's really great to have you here with us today. My name is Daniela Alaattinoğlu. I'm an Associate Professor of Law at the University of Turku and also the leader of the MARCEN project. Before I start with the questions in this webinar series, and we start the conversation, I would also like to remind everyone that you can ask questions via the chat at any point during the webinar. We will likely, if there is time, get to the questions by the end of the webinar, but you can ask them throughout the session. And when asking questions, please be mindful and respectful of others. So, Láilá, could you please tell us a bit about how you have been involved with the Swedish Truth Commission for the Sámi people thus far?
Thank you, Daniela. And first, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this conversation. I was one of the 13 original commissioners of the Truth Commission for the Sámi people in Sweden back in 2022. So I have been one of the commissioners that have followed the Commission the whole time, and I'm still a part of the Truth Commission. I was appointed, like the other members of the Truth Commission, by the Swedish Ministry of Culture in 2022. And after consultations between the Sámi Parliament and the Ministry on the makeup of the Commission. So I was asked as I guess a package of different kind of experts with different kind of academic background. As you said, I'm a human rights lawyer, and we also have members of the Commission who are historians and social scientists. So they have social science professors. So they have a very different academic background from myself. And before that, I was also involved in the discussions of the establishment of a Truth Commission for the Sámi people in Sweden. I was one of the international experts that joined the roundtables the dialogue that the Sámi Parliament and Sámi Nordic, the Sámi youth organization in Sweden, and other Sámi organizations had a very thorough discussion on whether the Sámi should ask for a truth commission to be established or not, both the pros and cons of truth commissions. So it was a group of international experts that came to Sweden and attended these discussions and also provided advice for the Sámi Parliament before they made a plenary decision that they wanted a truth commission to be established. So this process has been a big part of my life for the last 10 years or so, and it has been a privilege to be both a part of the initial discussions and also to be appointed as member of the commission. So that's very shortly how it came about that I'm sitting here as a commissioner.
Thank you very much. And as you say, so you have been involved in this work for quite some time, the last decade now, and the final report of the Swedish Truth Commission is also scheduled to be published later this year. I was wondering a bit about, so you mentioned now the mainly the establishment and of course your work in the Swedish Truth Commission, but how much have the different Nordic Truth and Reconciliation Commissions cooperated? We have had a similar commission in Norway and in Finland. Of course, there are some differences, but looking into the position of the Sámi people and oppression against the Sámi people. But how about this cooperation, and does it affect the work of the Swedish Truth Commission to sort of be the last commission to release its final report?
Well, of course, we've had some meetings with representatives of the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, both in Finland and Sweden. And our secretariat has also reached out to those two other secretariats in order to learn from them and also to be able to evaluate the work that they have done, to see what kind of dialogues and what kind of meeting formats, what kind of obstacles they've had in the process. So we have learned a lot from the other commissions, but like a formal collaboration or formal dialogue, there hasn't been this kind of a very formal way of cooperating. There was a discussion during the initial dialogue on the establishment of the Truth Commission in Sweden on whether there should be one Nordic Sámi Truth Commission instead of three. But as you know, it ended up with being three different commissions, and given that, I think also, and given the fact that we had different mandates, our mandate is different from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Finland, and also very different from the one in Norway, which includes more peoples than just the indigenous Sámi people. You also have the Kven and the Forest Finns in that process. So I guess along the way we saw that there were some things that we can learn from the other commissions, but mainly I think we have been looking at also other types of commissions, like the one in Canada, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Canada, and also some other initiatives from indigenous peoples, other places in the world. So, but definitely we've been inspired by the work both in Norway and Finland, and also have been very interesting to see the discussion after they finalized their reports and their recommendations to see what kind of public debate it has created, and also to see the response from state authorities, the Sámi parliaments, the Sámi society. So I guess I think we've both learned and also been very much inspired, but at the same time we've had to make our own choices to do our own work in the way that our mandate is created, which is slightly different from the two other commissions. But I do feel that the point that we are a truth commission instead of being a truth and reconciliation commission is also something that affects the work that we do. That the reconciliation part is not included in our mandate. It's something that is to be followed after we finalize our work. That then the discussions on reconciliation will start in Sweden. So, but obviously, it's been very interesting to see the debate on the commissions, both in Finland and Norway.
Thank you very much, and very interesting to hear about also these. You said that we have that you have learned some things from the Norwegian and the Finnish commissions as well, but also taken inspiration from elsewhere. I was thinking if there is some particular example of things that you have learned from the Norwegian and the Finnish commission in particular.
Oh, it's a difficult question because there's a lot of things that I could mention. But speaking for myself, I think one of the things that I learned from both commissions is that it's very important to have that very early discussion on what happens with all the testimonies, what happens with the material that is being gathered and analyzed by the commission, who is to systemize, to kind of make sure that these resources are being taken care of in the future, what kind of both legal framework, but also the kind of capacity is needed to be able to take care of all the things that are gathered by the commission. And there are some examples from the Norwegian and Finnish side which are good. Also that you have kind of decided on the archives, where should they be? Should the Sámi people have access to the material? And also that we are very much concerned that these are highly sensitive issues that people have shared with the commission, and we should have a very strict way of management of all this material. And I do know the discussion, for instance, on the Norwegian side, that the website of the Truth Commission was shut down, I think the day after the commission finalized its work. It received some critical comments on that fact, and I know that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Finland, they chose to keep the website up for a long period of time after they finalized their work. I am not sure if we will be able to do that the same as in Finland, but I do hope that we will be able to still have the website up and running, so that people can still read the material that's gathered there, and also to have a closer look at the work of the commission and the methodology and what kind of interviews we have done, and also who were the members and where did they come from and what kind of background did they have. And so I think it's very important to have that kind of continued focus on the mandate and the work of the commissions after that they have finalized So that is just one issue that I know that we had in common, and we used a lot of time to discuss this, and also to make sure that the Sámi society and the Sámi Parliament view on the matter of what happens with all the documentation is taken into consideration.
Thank you. So from your perspective inside the Truth Commission, what does meaningful state responsibility look like in a settler state such as Sweden? Now, thinking, of course, Norway and Finland are in a similar position here, but the question of state responsibility, what are your thoughts on this issue?
It's also a very broad question, and it depends on how you define state responsibility. As a human rights lawyer, I'm used to think that state responsibility is about human rights breaches and how you both monitor the state's measures when it comes to reparations and measures to avoid making the same mistakes that the state has made earlier in history. So state responsibility is very much an issue for the international community to monitor and to respond to, and for the other states to comment on. And also that you have various types of monitoring mechanisms internationally that can make sure that Sweden lives up to its international obligations. So that's kind of the responsibility thinking that I come from as a lawyer. But I do know that in Truth Commission context, responsibility can also be much more than that, and it is much more than that. It's both what we have done is, of course, we have investigated the wrongs of the past that the Swedish state has been responsible for, the injustices towards the Sámi people, both individually and collectively. So we've looked into historical wrongdoings and injustices, but we've also looked into the present time and what's happening now, today, to see if the state is actually learning from its own mistakes from the past. And also the future perspective, that you need to have some idea on how to make sure that the state doesn't make the same mistakes in the future, and how to address that. The state responsibility in our work our discussions has been both on what kind of, firstly, when we received the assignment and started discussing on what kind of recommendations should the Commission provide, since we don't have that reconciliation in our mandate, should we have a lot of recommendations on how to achieve reconciliation. And we quite early in the process, we decided that we need to have recommendations or proposals on different levels that are aimed on different levels of state responsibility. And also the whole idea of who speaks for the state, who is the state, who has the state been in Sweden for, like in historical times, when you didn't have like the national state as you see it today. But perhaps the church has a role. So you had different kind of institutions within Sweden that were not per se the state itself, but acted on behalf of a king or had some sort of mandate. So we have looked at responsibility both from a historical perspective, the present perspective, the human rights perspective, and also like a ethical, a moral responsibility. But of course, you cannot avoid, if you're talking about responsibility, questions about whether the state should apologize. Is that a way of kind of showing that you're taking responsibility? Should the state offer full reparation for the damages of state policies and all the actions that the state has done towards the Sámi people? We have discussed mechanisms. Should we establish, or we cannot establish, but should we recommend that the state establishes some sort of mechanism for a follow-up of the Truth Commission work? The purpose of the whole discussion was to kind of also challenge the idea that historical injustices are not something that you can fix or something that you can redress fully, and to have a look at what kind of proposals can a Truth Commission actually table to make sure that something is done about the power imbalance between the Sámi people and the majority people in Sweden. We have also looked into what kind of proposal should we make to make sure that the state doesn't repeat its own wrong policies and the wrongdoings of the past. So the accountability, I think it's a key word that we have looked into. What kind of state accountability should we have for the actions for both historical and ongoing injustices? And well, there is a very broad, we have a lot of different examples on wrongdoings in our work. So I guess if you read the assessment of the Truth Commission, you can also see that we address this issue from different perspectives. So stopping ongoing violations of rights, providing full reparations. So I guess there are these many R's. The recognizing that you have done something wrong, recognizing that there are actually two peoples in Sweden. You have the Sámi indigenous people and you have the majority majority Swedish people. What kind of restitution measures, what kind of reparational measures should the state offer to cater for reconciliation? So that I think is a very, it's not a concrete answer, since I cannot tell you what kind of proposals we are discussing, but those are some of the academic discussions we've had. And of course, listening to the Sámi in different kind of dialogue meetings that we've had, different parts of Sweden, just listening to what kind of expectations do the Sámi people themselves have to this kind of Truth Commission. What do they expect that the outcome should be of a Truth Commission? And it differs a lot. If you speak to young Sámi or elders or Sámi living in cities, reindeer herding Sámi who do hunting and fishing and gathering. So they have different kind of expectations for state responsibility, and that we address very clearly that the state has a responsibility for different kind of measures of reparation.
Thank you. So it seems to me, well, you highlighted this kind of different aspects of state responsibility, so the historical aspect, but also legal, human rights perspective, ethical perspectives. And it seems to me that even though the word reconciliation was removed from the title of the Swedish Commission, and the mandate might be restricted in this way, it seems that reconciliation is still a central part or a central theme to the work of the Truth Commission, in the sense that you talk about both recognition but also redress, right, and accountability. So I think that's a very well, important lesson also to learn and to find out about the work of the commission, that it's not just a truth telling commission in that sense. It's not just about the recognition, but also thinking about redress and measures of redress. I'm wondering a bit about so more about the work inside the Truth Commission. You talked about, of course, talking to Sámi people and hearing about people's expectations, but are there some parts of the work that have been particularly challenging?
Yes. I think when I first accepted this appointment, I was thinking that, well, this is a very broad mandate, although that we are not to propose very concretely all kinds of measures that can lead to reconciliation. That is very much up to the Sámi Parliament and the Sámi society and the Swedish society to agree on what kind of common path should you have towards the future, where you recognize the wrongs of the past and also to kind of avoid repeating them. But I have been very critical to Truth Commissions, since I feel that sometimes the mandates are too broad and it's kind of impossible to address all the different parts of a very broad mandate. And also the time constraints, that it's a very limited time to look at the whole Sámi people in Sweden and to look at different kind of geographical areas, to look into different kind of livelihoods and all the topics that are in our survey, the examination that we have done, both all kinds of legislation that can be discriminatory towards Sámi, all the boundaries that the Sámis has concerning land, water, exploitation of natural resources, all kinds of new industry coming into the traditional Sámi lands. So there are this very broad number of topics that the Truth Commission has been looking into and examined, and also looking into the consequences for the Sámi people as a people, but also for the different groups within the Sámi people in Sweden. So we decided early, since it was kind of challenging with the broad mandate, and I found it very challenging and still find it quite challenging to have a broad mandate. So we decided to make a list of 4 main areas, and we put it on our website very early so that people could actually see how we organize the work and what kind of methodology we used. So we made the 4 different areas, the first one being legislation, land, water, exploitation, the second being forced displacement of the Sámi, the third being the kind of the consequences of state policy when it comes to different livelihoods, not just reindeer husbandry or reindeer herding. There was this parallel commission in Sweden that were looking into the reindeer husbandry rights. So initially we started also examining the reindeer husbandry rights, and when we heard that the Commission on Reindeer Husbandry Rights was being shut down, then we kind of went back to the discussions on whether we should have some recommendations also on that topic. And the fourth, the lapp ska vara lapp policy, the lapp people should be lapp policy, which was a racial policy that led to the dispersal of Sami cultural heritage, and also this topic includes language and school policies, the loss of language. And also all these 4 areas, they have sub areas. And other areas we have also examined, and we have also kind of looked into different kind of topics regarding borders, because we know that there are some issues regarding the national borders that divides Sámi. And also we kind of received a lot of proposals on how we should work in the initial phase that kind of helped me as a commissioner to be more relaxed about that we're actually able to navigate this broad mandate in some way. But I found the time constraints and also the budget that we had, it's been challenging, because the Commission really wanted to reach out to all Sami communities and be able to have a very large number of testimonies, but we were not able to do that. So that has been, from my personal point of view, one of the things that I found very, very challenging. Challenging since I know the Sami communities, I know the people, they're my own people, and also know that they had great expectations that now finally someone is listening to these experiences, the lived life of a lot of Sami people across Sweden. And then we didn't have the opportunity to have those interviews and talks with all of them who wanted to contribute. So I find that very hard as a commissioner. I found that also very disturbing that we had to turn down people. But of course, I do understand also the kind of practical approach that we actually have a limited mandate period. Our term is ending. We cannot have interviews that goes on. And because we need also to have time to analyze that material. But for other Indigenous peoples who are considering starting this kind of process towards a Truth Commission, I would have some recommendations, both when it comes to the mandate and how to design a mandate that is actually possible to navigate and also to deliver on, because our deliverables are kind of the main thing in our work. If we're not able to deliver very concrete kind of proposals and some recommendations for the future, then that would be us not delivering according to our mandate. So that has been some of the challenges. And also, I think it has been tough to have also people leaving the Commission, and to have that kind of change in the leadership and the chairmanship of the Commission. I found that made the Commission kind of ineffective in a one way, because we had to start all over again on the discussions with a new chair. So that has been also one of the really big challenges of our Commission. Yeah. So although we have like the great expertise within the Commission, I found it every time that we had this backlash, kind of someone stepping down for different reasons, it it made the Commission kind of stop our work for a few months. And a few months' time, when you have a very limited time, is a long time. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think that's really something that I take from this comment of yours and these thoughts, that often how important the material resources and the kind of material conditions that this work is carried out, that's really crucial to how the work will be conducted and how what your possibilities are for engaging in this kind of well, both recognition and then also redress. I'm wondering a bit about I thought it was interesting that you earlier also mentioned, we talked about the different kinds of well, expectations on the commissions, talking to Sámi people about expectations, and then different forms of redress, and that you will also come up with some recommendations that also most likely talk about measures of redress. I'm wondering if you see some difference or a line between sort of more symbolic recognition of violations, thinking about apologies and reports. Of course, this is also a form of redress, but more so those on the one hand, the sort of more symbolic measures, and then on the other hand, material redress, accountability, more, well, reparations, guarantees of non-recognition. Do you think that there's a line between those two, and is it an important line if there is one?
Yes, it is important to draw that line, but also one thing doesn't exclude another. I think it's very important that the outcome of the Truth Commission, both or all the Truth Commissions, is not just merely that the Nordic states offer an apology to the Sámi people. An apology is, of course, symbolic, and symbolically very could be very important to have that kind of recognition of the state recognizing its role, both historically and today, and also kind of highlighting that in order for the Sámi people and in order to cater for reconciliation, you actually have to apologize in some way. But for me, I think an apology is kind of a start. It needs to be followed up by measures, and you need to have a very clear understanding of what does recognition mean. I mean, the Samis are recognized as indigenous peoples, so they don't need another kind of recognition in that sense. What the Sami need is for their status as indigenous people to actually have an impact on the politics of the Nordic states. That you are an indigenous people, you have rights, you have fundamental human rights, you have also rights under national legislation. I think just to kind of clarify, what does that mean in practice, that the Sami are indigenous, and what kind of protection legally should an indigenous people have for their culture, the language, their way of life. So I guess the Sami are fortunate in that way that we have constitutional recognition. Many indigenous people doesn't have that, but we have that in all Nordic countries. But what we don't have is kind of a plan, a national action plan for the implementation of the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. None of the Nordic countries have that. That is one thing just on top of my mind that kind of is. I know many Sami are very frustrated that there is no kind of action plan for the future. And I also think kind of when you discuss, like what we're discussing, are the long-term effects of colonization, discrimination, assimilation, the Samis' dispossession of Sami lands, territories, resources. Those are really heavy legal topics. And in order to find a way of coexisting the two peoples for Sweden, the majority Swedish people and the Samish, when they should coexist, you also need to have kind of an understanding of what is the common understanding of what do we need in order to protect the Sami culture and to make sure that we still have Sami livelihoods in the future. So I'm thinking that the conclusions that the Truth Commission is coming with, the recommendations, is a way of assisting both the state and the Sami to make this kind of new partnership, some sort of new agreement. The Sami doesn't have a treaty. We don't have that kind of treaty with the state, and that has been one of the challenges when it comes to legal protection. We don't have kind of a legal framework for Sami rights in the Nordic countries. So it's very fragmented, the protection of Sami rights. So I find that kind of apology is an instrument of reconciliation, but you cannot achieve reconciliation with an apology merely. So that's like constructing a house without the foundation for a house. So you kind of need to have that understanding in the majority society that there is something more that needs to be done. You need to have measures. So I think that kind of all the discussion, the earlier discussion we had on accountability and redress, we all need to link that to the lived lives and the experiences of the Sámi people, because the 300 interviews, all of them show a pattern of state neglecting the Sámi people, discriminating policies, practice, and discriminatory legislation. So a Truth Commission that doesn't address any form of redress or reparations, I think, will fail, since these issues are so important. Particularly, I think, when it comes to land rights, which is the most important issue for the Sámi people. In every single interview, land rights comes up in some form. And in every single community dialogue I have attended, and I've been a part of maybe 12 or 13 of those, land rights is kind of one of the first things that the Sámi talk about. So the dispossession of land, territories and resources is one of the things that is most important for the Sámi, and it needs to be addressed in some form in the Truth Commission report, the final report. Yeah, I'm not sure if that was a good, but I do have a kind of maybe not a distinction between apology and redress, but that they need to be combined in order to have effect.
Thank you. I really think that well, this is of course a very comprehensive also answer to the question, and I'm really intrigued by your mentioning of land rights also in this context, and that it came up in the interviews that you did, and how central it is, because of course we know that, well, in the Swedish context, you also mentioned that there was the reindeer grazing committee whose work was or that was disestablished in sort of middle of its period, which was supposed to look at land and water rights, and this brings me to thinking that well, there are some maybe areas and some kinds of rights which may be more easily recognized than others, or more that tend to be more difficult, or where the states, the nation states, might be less willing to recognize and redress. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about also the kinds of harm that the Sámi people have experienced, and whether some kinds of harm might be more difficult for legal frameworks to acknowledge, and whether transitional justice processes might be ways of addressing these harms, maybe not instead of legal frameworks, but in addition to legal frameworks.
It's a good question, and I also think that in my experience, one of the most difficult things when it comes to current harms arising from, for instance, green transition, mining, the needs for rare minerals, or what have you. There are so many kind of pressing issues that leads to this pressure on Sámi lands, and the kind of idea that the Sámi cannot be in the way of development, that the Sámi need to also be a part of the solution, which I believe is right, that the Sámi need to be a part of the solution, but the way that you have this very large scale use of, for instance, reindeer herding, grazing lands for different purposes, like industry in Sweden. That's just one example on this kind of fragmented policies, that you have so many different forms of activities or different forms of industries on the same areas, that you kind of lose the overall sight of what is going on. And just to map out these kind of consequences of state politics is very important. And I think the Truth Commission has only started mapping out the harms. Someone else needs to do this. When we finalize the work, we need researchers, we need organizations, we need human rights kind of bodies. We need someone to continue the work, because there is still a lot of work that is undone. And one of the things that I find is very difficult is the cumulative effects of different kind of industrial establishment of industry in Sámi areas. It's difficult to see the harm, since maybe if you look isolated at that one mine, might not be the kind of a huge problem for Sámi livelihoods. But if you put them all together, and if you have a kind of overview of all the kind of industry and different kind of pressure from the outside on Sámi lands, you get a completely different picture. But I do think it's difficult to have that kind of very analytical approach, since you have this sectorism. All the Nordic countries are very much like, you have a sector for mining, you have a sector authority for wind industry and other things, that you don't get that kind of overall approach at all. I think it's difficult, one of the most difficult issues, to make sure that you have not just environmental assessments, but you actually have true effective consultations where the Sámi are included on an equal basis as industry and authorities, to be able to, in an early phase, to map out the harms, the possible harms, and also to be taken into the process as I think it's one of the things that we already see is the Consultation Act in Sweden, which has a very good purpose, but the aim of the act is not being implemented, since the Sámi communities doesn't have the personal capacity or legal capacity or economical capacity to follow up all the consultations that they should be actually following up. That is just one example of a topic which I think the state is struggling with, and we need to find some sort of solution for that, because it's very, very difficult, and it's harmful for the Sámi livelihoods, the way that they experience this today. So I guess it's difficult, since this is interests of high kind of, it's important for the national political parties to have different kind of extractive industry, but at the same time, the same authorities, Riksdag and the government, they are responsible to both make sure that human rights are being respected. You need to have due diligence on different kind of state corporations to not be involved in breaches of human rights. So there are a lot of things that could be done in a better way in Sweden. And I hope that the Truth Commission can provide some advice on this, that how can we actually come about to make it more in accordance with international law.
Thank you. I was thinking you talked a little bit about also the sort of current threats, or and you also mentioned earlier this kind of how your work has really linked past, present, and future. And now thinking about sort of present and future and the harms and ongoing discussions. So a very big part of that is, of course, the sort of increasing interest in Sápmi by nation states, but also by different industries, also supranational institutions and organizations, so extractive industries, the so-called green transition, also called green colonialism, to mitigate climate change, so infrastructure projects, increasing tourism. Knowing now that your mandate is, of course, very broad, and you have many different questions that you have looked at, and it must have been, or it must be very challenging, but to what extent have you been able to also address this kind of ongoing and maybe in the future so likely to increase harms and threats in Sápmi?
I should be very careful on how detailed I can answer your question, but yes, of course, the examination that the Truth Commission has been doing on kind of the developments through history and up until today, on various forms of state activity, state policies, state politics, strategies, legislation, different kinds of kind of the whole relationship between the Sámi and the state. Okay. How does it evolve? We started out looking at the Sámi autonomous SIDAs, the Sámi autonomous societies, 1600, 1700, and then suddenly you get the church, the state, you get different actors, third-party actors, industry, establishments. So I think there's a kind of a red thread through the examination that you can actually see a trend that goes from a strong autonomous Sámi societies to weak Sámi autonomous societies. And now we're kind of moving back to the situation that we used to have, that you had self-determination within the Sámi societies, and you had also these autonomous functions regarding land rights, how to use lands, and the Sámis had a much more prominent role historically than they have today. So this is important for us to examine and also look into what happened and how can we actually make sure that the Sámi autonomy is being respected as an indigenous people. So I do think that if the state recognizes that the Sámi are indeed people with the right to self-determination, they should have a right to free, prior, and informed consent when it comes to different kind of extractive industry or other types of strategies that affects their lands or their societies. If you get this kind of recognition also that the Sámi have their own judicial thinking and social structures that could be helpful for the Swedish state when it comes to finding solutions that makes it possible for the Sámi to survive as a people. Our main basis for our discussions is, of course, the interviews, the testimonies from the Sámis that have shared their history. And it's a very strong kind of snapshot of today's situation. If you listen to the people and listen to what they say and listen to how they describe their own situation, you can also find some sort of solution to sometimes it's a very easy solution that consultation should be done in a very open and transparent way, and also for the Sámis to be able to participate fully and effectively. That is a very easy solution. You can start on early with consultations. And then there are other things that are more difficult, perhaps, that will require a lot of legislative changes. But we have looked into all the interview materials, to what kind of recommendations do the Sámi themselves want the Commission to make. We have also looked into the research volume that was finalized earlier this year. To all the research, the outcome of the research and the conclusions from our researchers, they also provide some kind of expertise and recommendations from their academic perspective. So if you put together all of this and the people who have been a part of the dialogue community meetings, we have actually a very large number of recommendations to look at. And also the Sámi Parliament has been actively talking with the Commission and pointing out some really important matters for them that the Truth Commission should in some way assess and provide some background. Sometimes perhaps it's up to the Sámi themselves to design the final result. Maybe the Truth Commission in some areas can just point out that this needs to be fixed. You need to have legislation on this topic. You need to have maybe better implementation of international law on these matters. And again, I think for us to succeed, we need the Sámi people to own this reports and to find that we have actually addressed the most pressing issues. And we need for the state to own it, to actually feel that this is helpful. This can provide for a new way of communicating and having this kind of partnership between the Sámi and the state. So yeah, but I do also knowing the backlash that other indigenous peoples have had, like in Canada, you've had this very strong backlash also when it comes to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the follow-up. I think we need to be very critical that we make sure that we have the mechanisms early on, right after the Truth Commission have delivered our last report and no longer exists, that there is a follow-up to the work. And what kind of follow-up that should be? Well, we're discussing different kind of models, but I do think that it's the Sámi people themselves who need to take the ownership for the continuation of this discussion. We can provide a framework. We can provide with this very, very interesting kind of historical examination. But the Sámi themselves need to then make sure that they follow up this together with the state. And I do understand that that is kind of a very ideal kind of setting. There will be a lot of discussions that are difficult. But if we find a way to have a framework for also the most difficult discussions regarding land, regarding use of, regarding maybe also the internal discussions in the Sámi society, where you have different groups of Sámi with different interests. How can the Sámi be able to have a way of dealing with those issues where you have internal disagreements like all other people have? It's not a particular Sámi challenge, but I do think that we need to have the Sámi Parliament, Sámi organizations as a very strong part of the solution for the follow-up of the Truth Commission report. I'm not sure if I answered your question concretely, but I do think that someone in the Commission has been kind of playing with the idea of having some sort of standing commission, a standing Truth Commission, that the reconciliation process is a never-ending process. It should never end. Because it's an ongoing discussion between the state and the Sámi. And it should never end, because it's actually a matter that you need to discuss each and every day. It's a very interesting way of looking at it, I think.
Yes, and I think that's an excellent place also to finalize this discussion because we have come to the end of our time. Thank you very much, Láilá, for your thoughts for this conversation. I also very much look forward to the publication of the final report and to follow the very important follow-up work and the reconciliation process.
I thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.